Good morning. My name is Alyssa Parker, the Director of Communications for BBB, and want to welcome you to the question and answer session with Patrick Rodriguez of the SBA. Some really quick housekeeping, want to get through that before we get started with the questions. So first of all, we have sent all of the webinar recordings out to all accredited businesses and have been updating the bbbevents.org site regularly. We've recently added telework basics that will be set to take place on Monday at 2 p.m., crisis communications with Bolt PR at Tuesday at 2 p.m., and an HR question and answer session with Marsh McLennan Professional Services Agency on Thursday, April 2nd at 2 p.m. I know that's a lot of events that I just threw at you, but you can go and check them all out at bbbevents.org as well as register for each and every one. So we are incredibly lucky to have Patrick Rodriguez from the SBA back with us. He was here with us on Tuesday presenting about the economic injury disaster loans. But right now we're just having a question and answer session because I know each and every single one of you probably have specific questions that you'd like to ask him. I have actually been sent some questions ahead of time, so we're going to get started with those. But please put whatever questions you may have in the question box so that we're able to get them answered. This is your chance to be able to hear everything. So we will go ahead and get started. Patrick, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Perfect. So the first question that I have is, what if our employees are now taking out unemployment? Can we rehire them and still qualify for loan program?
Yeah, so without all the information, you would be eligible for an economic injury disaster loan. I mean, that's something that's affecting you. So, it's up to the individual business owner as far as like if they're, keeping folks on payroll or not. One of the uses for the economic injury disaster loan is to make payroll, pay fixed debts, pay accounts payable, and pay other bills that you can't pay right now due to the coronavirus disaster, economic downturn, whatever you want to call it. So if you were to take out an economic injury disaster loan and were approved, then you could use that money for payroll. So I think they may be referring to the CARES Act, which is working its way through Congress right now. And I'm really not going to answer any specific questions on that just because it hasn't been signed by the president yet. And SBA will be doing specific FAQs, talking points, and separate outreach related to the CARES Act, which is hopefully being passed the next day or so.
Okay, so hopefully at that point we can get you back and you can fill us in on that CARE Act at that point.
Yes.
Okay, so another question that we have is, there were some website snafus a day or so ago. Is it better now, or how should I apply to ensure my application gets to the SBA?
Yes, well, good question. So the portal was working fine Monday, Tuesday, went down Wednesday, came back up late Thursday in a different form, meaning that we had like an online, say, TurboTax-like application that walked you through it online. And because of the volume, it was not able to handle the 30 million or so small businesses that were going on there. It was meant for local disasters like the Eastern Seaboard or earthquake or something like that the whole country isn't affected by. So what they did is they changed it to where you can print out the PDFs on the form, and I can supply those. I think I may have supplied them to you already, but I'll resupply them to you guys in a PDF form. You can share them and have links to the documents online. You'll print them out. You'll sign them, fill them out, sign them, make sure you sign them. That's really important. And then you're going to just rescan them in a digital format, preferably PDFs, and you're going to drag and drop them into the Dropbox and upload them to the SBA. And that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to fill them out, sign them, and then mail them in to the Fort Worth Center. And I'll put that here on the screen here. Here's the portal, and there's the mailing address, and I'll supply those in a separate email to you. Same as always, but that was a backup. That was a backup. Now it's going to be the preferred method. Upload into the portal and mail. Those are the two ways to submit your loan application currently.
Okay, perfect. And yeah, we'll be sure that everyone is able to get that PDF so that they're able to send it in. Another question that we have is, if your credit score is 600 or 500, can you still apply for the loan?
Could you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, if your credit score is 500 or 600, can you still apply for the loan? Patrick?
Yeah, okay. You're kind of cutting out again. I apologize.
Oh, sorry. It's asking about the credit score. If it's 500 or 600, can they still apply?
Yes, I would say apply. It's not a typical loan. It's based on your pre-existing cash flow and your schedule of liabilities. So it's not going to be like a typical bank loan where you request an amount of money and then they pull your credit score and you got to have one-to-one collateral. And it's an emergency loan directly from the U.S. government. It's not a collateral-based loan. It's more of a pre-crisis cash flow loan, and the term's 30 years. So we want to keep that debt burden as low as possible during the recovery. And repayment doesn't start for 12 months. So the loan would go out to you with a 3.75% interest rate for for-profits, 2.75% interest rate for nonprofits. It could sit on your balance sheet, on your books for up to 12 months without any sort of payment, principal and interest payment for 12 months.
Okay, awesome. Is this loan available for self-employed people?
Yes, that's for sure. 100% yes. Please apply as a self-employed, sole proprietor, online business. All those would be eligible.
Okay, great. So there was another question that said, is this loan something we need to pay back? Just wanted to, since that was submitted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. So as written, right, we're delving into the what we know right now. Okay, is that the SBA disaster loan was authorized last year, and the appropriation cycle came out, and it was a $50 billion tranche of money for future disasters, and it came with an interest rate of 3.75 and a repayment period of up to 30 years. So until Congress authorizes that or portions of that for loan forgiveness, one should assume that that's a loan, not a grant. And in the next few days, we'll be hearing from SBA headquarters when the CARE Act is passed. Those loans may be some of the portions or all of those portions or all of the amounts of those loans may be forgiven. I'm not sure what specifics are for that. I'm kind of really not going to talk too much about it, but think of it as a piece of a puzzle. So the economic injury disaster loan is one piece of the puzzle. You would apply, maybe knowing that it would have to be paid back, be approved by the SBA, have that ability to draw down that money if needed. There's no obligation to take the offered amount. And even if you take the offered amount, you can pay back any amount penalty-free. So it might be a peace of mind for you to go ahead and apply, get approved, have that money there knowing that it's available to you, and then also take advantage of the upcoming CARE Act funds that are being discussed in Congress right now.
Okay, great. Another question that we have is regarding collateral. Says page 6 of your presentation mentions loans under $25,000 do not need
I'm
collateral.
cutting out again.
Can you hear me now? I can hear you well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually copy this question, and then let's see. I will put it in the chat box that me and Patrick have together so he can answer it. And then I will read it out for the audience.
You've cut out. Oh,
okay.
Gotcha. Sorry.
Can you? Yeah, it's okay.
So
what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out the question for the audience, and then I'll put it in the chat box so that you definitely see the question, because I know I can hear you and the audience can hear you. I think just our connection between us is cutting out.
1,000 do not need collateral. Does that mean SBA will not ask for collateral with that size loan? That's correct. Yes, under 25,000 does not need any type of collateral. Will SBA still try to get collateral lien? Not under 25,000, no. Also, is it under 25,000 or 25,000 and under? That's a quick question. I think it's, look at the maximum unsecured loan amount is 25,000. So that would be 25,000 and under is unsecured. So over 25, yeah. So we're really not in a collateral business during the disaster loan program. And if you are asking for additional, let's say you're in the 500,000 million, it goes up to $2 million. SBA is going to probably look for business assets, business collateral, and then look toward personal assets as collateral. Now, if you do not have collateral, let's say you're an IT business, you are online, you rent server space, and you're virtual, you're doing software services, you don't have any collateral, it doesn't preclude you from applying to the SBA economic injury disaster loan. That not having collateral will not be a sole means of denial. You there, Lisa? To upload, all documents need to be scanned into one PDF? No, they do not. I mean, if you had that capability, it just depends on the bandwidth. I would say it'd probably be easier for your computer or the program to take, 11 or whatever the 7 documents they are individually versus one document, one mega document that maybe goes into the 50 megabyte realm. So I would scan them individually. See here. It started that the loan process online. It required me to input the address of the damaged property. I don't have damaged property, but it wouldn't let me proceed without including the address. How do I indicate that I don't have damaged property? So if that was previous to the, so if you had started it earlier in the week and we're doing the online application, you probably will not be able to go back into that and finish that application as the portal is currently constructed. You would have to go back, print out the PDF documents, fill them out in writing, and then upload them. And because this isn't like a normal earthquake or hurricane, you want to make sure you're applying for economic injury, and that's the first box in the application on Form 5. You want to state that you are applying for economic injury, not damages. Damages meaning like physical damages, but I think you're referring to the online application. The paper application is fairly easy to interpret that economic injury box and just select economic injury, nothing else.
Okay, great. Patrick, can you hear me now? Okay, I think we're still having some problems. We're just going to do this. Let's see.
All right, so the next question is, does this process generate a credit inquiry that could potentially affect my credit score? So first off, I'll answer that question. Yes, it will generate a credit inquiry when they process your SBA economic injury disaster loan. Does this process generate a credit inquiry? Yes, so that's the same question again. Yes, it will generate a credit inquiry.
Okay, so I'm really sorry about this. We're just going to work through these communication issues, but we're still getting your questions. Please submit your questions, and we're just sending them to Patrick through a chat box that him and I have. So we're still being able to answer your questions, and please continue to submit them.
Okay. Sure. So the next question is, if there is an existing line of credit with the bank with zero balance used, will an SBA disaster loan still be granted? I think they're getting at, let's say they have a line of credit for 100,000. It's sitting on their at their bank with that ability to borrow. Would that affect your SBA disaster loan? No, it would not. We are waiving the credit elsewhere test. So even if you had credit elsewhere, it would not preclude you or affect your SBA disaster loan. So we're being very lenient in the credit review. We practically waived the credit elsewhere, so you don't need to be declined by a bank. If you have existing lines of credit, you could still apply. We really want this to be a very low cost and repayable loan for you over 15 to 30 years, and with minimal, cash flow impediment after all this is over during the recovery. So we would prefer that you go this route and get a lower interest rate with a longer term versus maybe a higher interest rate with the shorter term. Yeah, so don't quote me on, somebody asked me about the number of forms. I off the top of my head, I said 7, but I'll email the forms to Alyssa, and then you can go to the disasterloan.sba.gov and download them directly. Yeah, don't quote me on the number of forms, please, but go to the SBA.gov/disaster to download them. Someone can't get into their account now, and they submitted it last week. Do I need to resubmit? If you had after your application at the very end, while it was still up in the old form, if you got a completed notice on the prompter after you send in your application, then you should be okay. I would check in and call. I would call this number here, the 1-800 number, just to double check. 1-800-659-2955, or email disastercustomerservice@sba.gov to check. But if you had that completed prompt after you submitted it, you should be fine. double check with those numbers and emails. If you call and you're on the phone and you get the typical call center response, you are whatever number in the queue. I've heard someone say that they were 250 in the queue. Don't be discouraged, believe me, that would be discouraging if I heard that. But FEMA in support of the SBA disaster loan program. And so both FEMA and SBA together are manning the call center, and they sent over 500 employees. So hopefully that will cut that wait time down to a minimum. But we have two call centers, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, and then also with the FEMA call center coming online, we should be cutting that response time down to a minimum.
Okay, we're continuing to send questions. As I mentioned before, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties between Patrick and I, but we're still able to answer your questions, so please continue to submit.
Yeah. So next question is, if I utilized a credit line already from a bank with a much shorter term and much higher interest rate, can I get an SBA economic disaster loan to pay off that bank credit line that's not feasible to pay for a long term? If it's an existing debt, then you probably could make the argument, yes, because you took it out during the disaster, and that would be a kind of a fixed debt or other bill that needs to be paid. So I'll double check on that. But yes, if you took it out recently, that should be fine. The counter argument would be SBA disaster loans not meant to refinance existing debt. But that's a kind of more in terms of, I have a term loan and it's at 5%, and I want to refinance it with this SBA disaster loan at 3.75. So if it's a line, I think you would be able to make the argument, yes, if it was used for this disaster. The bridge loans, by the way, there are some, so the NC economic, there is a bridge loan out there through the Golden Leaf Foundation, up to $50,000. You can check it out online. Golden Leaf Foundation, just Google Golden Leaf Foundation Bridge Loan, and you should find more information on that. Those bridge loans can be repaid from the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan if you needed it to be. All right, next question is applicant's legal name. Should this be completed as your business name? Oh, great question. So on Form 5, you're going to be walked through the type of injury. You're going to say economic. The second question is going to be what type of entity you are: corporation, partnership, limited partnership, sole proprietor, S Corp. So it's asking about your kind of corporate identity. If you fill in partnership or corporation or LLC, that applicant's legal name is your business name, not your personal name or individual name. So you want to fill out in Form 5, question 3, your business name. And then it says your federal tax ID, and that would be your EIN for your business. And then under trade name, which is the next question, box 5, you can leave that blank. You don't have to fill that in. If you go down the route of sole proprietorship, let's say in that first box, in box 2, you say I'm a sole proprietor, you want to use Form 5C. And then as a sole proprietor, you're going to list your individual name, first, middle, last name, and your social security number. So the application asks questions such as amount of estimated loss and insurance coverage. Can we NA those as needed? Yeah, if you do not have insurance, yes, you can. If you do have insurance, please fill it in. Amount of estimated loss, you can look at your 2018, 2019 financial statements, take a gander or guess on what your economic loss has been, and you can fill it in there. And also in the other information box and in the financial section at the very bottom, you can put down a number that you think you may need. If there's a number in your mind that you just think, you know what, I know I need this much to get through the year or this much to get through this, you could put that number in that narrative section or the other information box and put some bullet points on your assumptions and your basis for that number. And that might help the loan officer come up to that number if they were going to be offering a little bit less.
Okay, great. Thank you for hanging in there, folks. I think Patrick and I are having some technical difficulties talking with each other, but you're still able to get the information. So please continue to get those questions in. I'm going to send him another one. So please continue to send those questions in to us.
Cool. Can I use this money for any business related expenses, including payroll? Yes, yes, yes. Payroll is one of the acceptable uses for the economic injury disaster loan. So any fixed debts, accounts payable, and bills that you can't pay because of the downturn and the disaster's impact, including payroll, are all acceptable uses. Can you still apply? So someone's asking if they can apply if they've declared bankruptcy before. So that'll just go into the I think there is a box or some kind of question regarding that. So just answer, it's not gonna preclude you from applying. So you can still apply even with the declared bankruptcy prior to this. If your business really hasn't been affected, should you still apply? I would say I would leave that up to the business owner, but there's no harm in applying because we don't know the effects of this and how long it's going to go on. So as a type of kind of like peace of mind, might as well go on, apply, see what the SBA is going to be offering you, and have that available if needed. So we don't know how this is going to disrupt the, overall the economy moving forward. So it might be a kind of good peace of mind to have that ability to say, hey, I've been approved for X amount. At least I know that if I need it, I can draw that down. And I wouldn't have to pay any payments for 12 months on that amount. So no principal or interest payments for 12 months and have that sitting on your balance sheet. What are you not allowed to use the money for? So it's not meant for expansion and it's not meant for refinance. So it gets a little tricky when you kind of think through some of the uses because let's say you want to change your delivery model because of the current situation and the kind of the lack of ability to gather and you're a certain type of business that needs people to be congregated like a bar or something. So you're thinking about changing your delivery model. Could you use it for that? Well, is that an expansion or is that just paying your normal operating costs and normal debts? So it's kind of iffy, but we're really looking for you to pay your fixed debts that you have already, your payroll you have already, accounts payable. and other bills that you have currently versus making new obligations and paying those down with the disaster loan. We are an S Corp. What's the difference between number 17 owners and business entity owner? Okay, so I know it's a little bit in the weeds, but for that one, let me go to my form here. I think you probably can see all this. Let's see here. So as a owner, you want to list on 17, you want to list, so I'm going to go back here a little bit here. So trade names, alternate business. So on 17, you're going to list each owner of the S Corp and their percentage ownership. So if you have a 50% owner, a 40% owner, and a 10% owner, you're gonna list all those business owners here. And if you have additional ones, you want to attach an additional sheet. So 50%, another percent, let's say you have a 40%, put it here, 10% attach additional sheet. And you want to keep going down there and fill those until you reach 100% ownership level. What's the difference between number 17 owners and business entity owner? Let me try to figure out that exact question here. So you want to, you can, if you're an S Corp, you want to fill out the top part, not the bottom part right here. So this little secondary piece, you can leave blank. The business entity owner portion, you can leave blank. But this part where it says owners, legal name, social security number, mailing address, legal name, mailing address, you want to fill that out. You can leave the business entity owner name blank. That would be, it's kind of a, you'd be replicating information if you filled out both. Sorry to confuse folks, but the application is a little bit confusing. I'm a self-employed S Corp. I'm only employee. I do not use payroll. I simply transfer money from the business to personal account to pay myself. Can I include those accounts in my bullet point list of what is needed for the year in addition to rent expense? Yes. Yes. So it sounds like you're taking a draw versus salary. So yes, those expenses would be acceptable in order to pay yourself. Yeah. Does this loan affect anything with the CARE Act? So to be determined. So we're really not going to delve too much into the CARE Act. This is one piece of the federal government's response to this disaster. As written, it is a loan, not a grant. Later today, when hopefully the House passes it and the president signs it, we'll know what's officially on the books, and we'll be able to go in there and see if it's going to affect the disaster loan application or the disaster loan program, or if it's going to be a totally separate facility for lending. And the CARES Act, it looks like, will be going through third-party lenders, which are SBA lenders, whereas the economic injury disaster loan comes directly from the federal government, U.S. Treasury, and SBA. So more information to follow, but as written, this is a separate program for right now.
Okay, great. Thanks for hanging in there with us. We still have several questions. As if you've been listening, there have been some technical difficulties between Patrick and I. We're still able to get all of the questions answered. We just want to make sure that you submit them in the question box, and I will be sure that he gets them. So he cannot hear me. Sometimes I'm going in and out. but we're still able to answer those questions. So yes, continue to send them in to me. And yes, this will be recorded, so you can listen to it later. So I'm going to continue to send Patrick questions so he can answer them.
Cool. By the way, Alyssa, your audio is great now. So it's
okay. We're back. Yay! So great to hear.
I can hear everything you're saying now.
Okay, awesome. Well, I guess the latest one I just sent you said, what happens if I default on this loan?
Yeah, so it is a federal government obligation, much like a federal student loan. It's not going to be taken off your credit report. Worst case scenario, it'll be sent to Treasury, and Treasury will keep it on your file until it's paid off. But most likely, like other SBA loans that kind of reach that point, there could be a what they call a workout, which says like how much can you pay right now, and a lot of times SBA takes a lesser amount for that loan. So so it would go to Treasury and they would sit on it, and it would be on your credit report. Or I think it would be, but it would definitely sit on the Treasury's books. I'm not sure if it would end up being shown on your credit report or not. I don't know that for a fact.
Okay, great. So I'll continue to put them in the chat box just in case I go in and out, Patrick. But the next question that we have says, do I have to be in business a certain amount of time to qualify?
Yeah, so startups are going to be a little bit harder. I would say apply, let the SBA determine what that time frame is. I would, if you just started in January, I would think that case would be a little harder to prove an economic injury. I know there would be one, but there wouldn't be any previous revenue to compare it against. Versus, let's say you started in June of 2019 and maybe you had 3 to 6 months of revenue, and now January rolls around and that revenue's declined. So there was an economic injury to kind of look back on and compare it to. So apply, let the SBA say yes or no, and kind of go from there.
Okay, great insight. The next question we have is, does the state of North Carolina have any say in these loans, or is it solely at the discretion of the federal government?
Yeah, so the SBA economic injury loan comes directly from the SBA via the U.S. Treasury, and the state of North Carolina is not involved in the distribution or disbursement or underwriting at all of this type of loan. There are additional loans out there right now. The NC Rapid Recovery Loan, which is a loan under $50,000 that folks can look at. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick here. Maybe you can take a look at it while we're on the call here. NC Rapid Recovery. Cool. Can you see that? Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it on my end.
Okay.
So I think it should be good.
Okay, so if you want to look for potential other sources of recovery financing, NC Rapid Recovery Loan, this is a non-SBA loan supported by the Golden Leaf Foundation, and you can apply for that, and that is up to $50,000, and it's meant to get out the door immediately. So I think they're doing them right now, and they're being provided through local CDFIs, which are Certified Development Financial Institutions, which are like nonprofit lenders. Yeah, here are the lending partners. Here are the lending partners: NC Rural Center, Thread Capital, Business Expansion Fund, Funding Corporation, Carolina Small Business Development Fund, Mountain BizWorks, NCI Fund, Self Help, and SBA partners are helping support the loan application process. If you have questions, you can reach out to the local SBA Resource Partner Network.
Okay, great. Those are great resources for to look at as well. The next question we have is, once I submitted my application, how long will it take to get this money?
So once submitted, we're looking at an 8 to 21 day turnaround. 8 days meaning like 25,000 or less unsecured. 21 being like larger corporation, maybe multiple owners, affiliations potentially, with 5 days for the disbursement of the funds, which in previous disasters like Hurricane Matthew and Florence, those checks were mailed to the business owners directly. So we'll see how it comes out this time, but it's set up to be mailed, but I don't know if it's going to come out that way this time.
Okay. The next question that we have is, are there any resources to help walk me through the application?
Great question. Yeah, so what I will do is, see if I can put this on the screen here. I'll try to get that. Well, let's see here. It's in my PowerPoint, actually. Let me go to the PowerPoint. Yeah, so here we go. So if you need assistance, please call these, please go to these websites. These are SBA resource partners, the Small Business Technology Development Center, SCORE, the Veterans Business Outreach Center, and the Women's Business Center. These are all local SBA partners who help us during normal times with one-on-one mentoring and conventional loan packaging. And during this emergency, they're helping folks with their SBA disaster loans and walking them through the process.
Okay, that's incredibly helpful. Another question that we have is, can we pay off the recovery loan with the disaster relief loan?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
It says, can we pay off the recovery loan with the disaster relief loan? I'm not sure.
Yeah, recovery meaning, yeah, recovery. Are they talking about like the one that's being proposed by Congress? I don't know.
I'm thinking. Yeah.
I see. I see what they're saying. I see what they're saying. They're saying yes. So let's say they went to North Carolina and got the rapid recovery. Yes. So that is a bridge loan. That's meant to be, ideally, that's meant to be a bridge loan. So I need capital as soon as possible to pay vendors to keep the lights on, whatever, for immediate capital access. You take out that loan, it's 0% interest, and you are able to repay that bridge loan with the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That is acceptable use of funds for that.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Thank you for that question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm glad we were able to get that answer out there. The next question we have is, I'm a home-based business and I started this business last January. So should we file taxes before applying, since you said you needed the tax form signed?
If it's under 500,000, I wouldn't worry about it. If your revenue is under 500,000, then SBA's pretty much waiving the tax return requirement. So I wouldn't, if it's under 500, I would say no. If you're going to be needing more than 500 or have revenues over 500, then you would be required to submit some type of tax return with your application.
Okay, this was an emailed in question, so she has some follow-up. She says, since the bulk of my sales would have happened between Mother's Day, graduation, and Father's Day, and a lot of these events have been canceled or rescheduled, how do I show this in the application? She's used personal funds to purchase supplies on credit cards.
Right, so it would go back to your 18-19 revenues. It's going to ask you what your previous year's revenue was. So if you had that revenue to show in 18 or 19, then it'll enter into the calculation for how much SBA is going to be offering you as a disaster loan. And it's also going to calculate, include in that calculation, all your schedule of liabilities, which you'll be providing, like fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, other bills. It's going to do a calculation, and then it'll offer you an amount. So let's say you had a big event planned for Mother's Day, but it didn't happen this year. The economic injury loan's not meant to make up for lost profit, but in the sense that that number will kind of enter into the equation based on your 18 or 19 figures if you had that similar revenue. But it's not going to replace that big sale of a fixed asset or tractor or an event that you were counting on.
Okay, that's great insight. Another question we just have is, I've heard both 15 and 30-year terms. Can you explain what will dictate the terms of the loan?
So SBA is going to calculate the amount, and it's going to look at your revenue, and it's going to come out with a number between 15 and 30 years, 15, 20, 25, 30, and it's going to offer you those terms. You can come to the SBA and say, we really want longer terms, but if it's like a small loan, let's say it's 50,000 over 30 years, the minimum SBA loan payment has to be at least $50 per month. So we don't want to create a huge debt burden on this recovery, on this business that's in recovery, but we have to have a minimum payment of at least $50 per month.
Okay. All right, good to know. The next question is, do both company tax returns and personal returns need to be in the application if you're an S Corp?
The business, let me double check on that. Let me double check. I think if you're an S Corp, I think it's going to go through your personal taxes, because some taxes are so tricky, because you can be an LLC taxed like an S Corp, you can be an S Corp taxed like something else, and it just gets really fuzzy. So if you want to just email me that offline, I'll double check on those tax type questions, because they're a little bit more tricky to answer.
Okay, that sounds great. And so for the person who submitted that question, I'll be sure to email Patrick that directly, so that I can forward you that answer. So I know who you are, so don't worry there. The next question that we have is to clarify, if my revenue is less than 500K, there's no need to send tax returns. So just send the form 4506 with the application ?
That's correct. That's correct. That came out of a conference call with the Office of Disaster Assistance. So they're waiving that right now, that requirement. So if your revenue is less than 500,000, no need for the tax return, but you must sign and submit the 4506T, which is basically just the insurance. It's the ability for SBA to go to the IRS directly and pull your tax returns if needed.
Okay, great. The next question is, how much can I ask for?
Sure. So so the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan is not like a normal loan application. It's not going to have a box for you to state a requested amount. It's going to walk you through what your revenues are, what your expenses are, and then it's going to calculate a number that the SBA is going to offer you through your continuity of operations. And you can, in the application, you can put under the narrative or other information box a dollar figure that you're looking for, and buttress that with some assumptions and some financial arguments, and then put it in there. That might help the loan officer come up to that number if it's above what we're already going to offer you.
Okay, great. And there's another question about personal taxes versus the business taxes for an S Corp. So if you just want to email me personally, I'll be sure to get them to Patrick and make sure that we have that answer for you. I just think it's probably a little difficult for him to answer on this type of platform. So go ahead and email me directly. I'll be sure to give you my email at the end of the presentation, which we have about 5 minutes left. So if you have your last second questions, please go ahead and submit them. We have another question. They said, I know you mentioned collateral requirements earlier. I didn't exactly pick up everything. Can you go through the collateral requirements again, please?
So for, let's see here, go to that. So for the economic injury disaster loan, no collateral requirements under 25,000. So if the loan comes out under 25,000, there's no collateral. Over, SBA is going to say, what available collateral is there? What kind of assets are available? We're not a collateral lender. We're a pre-crisis cash flow lender under this program. So if it is an amount that's sizable and there is collateral available on the business side or the personal side, SBA may ask you to pledge that for the loan amount. So it's not a hard and fast rule. If you do not have collateral, that's not going to kick you out of the loan application or deny you based solely on collateral or lack of collateral. So we just encourage everybody to apply and kind of go from there.
Okay, great. So another question that we have is, will I be getting a call from the SBA once my application is in to clarify my answers?
No, not necessarily. If they have a question regarding your application, you'll be getting an email from the SBA loan officer, and just reply back as soon as possible. So be checking your inbox, your spam folder. If you wait too long, I think the cutoff is 7 days. So if you don't reply back to an inquiry from the loan officer within 7 days, your loan application will be withdrawn. So make sure you're monitoring your email and just be wary. Make sure it's coming from a .gov domain or and you're applying through a .gov domain, just in case there's some funny stuff going on out there right now.
Okay, great. We actually don't have any more questions, and we are getting close to our 1 hour time limit. So Patrick, I want to thank you, so much for being here and answering our questions. And I'll touch base with you. So hopefully once we hear more about the CARE Act, and once obviously you get, information on it, we can hopefully have you back if time allows. But as a reminder, I do want to put, remind people about bbbevents.org for the remainder of our presentations and webinars that we have. We have a good bit of really helpful information, and I'm actually going to, let's see, switch it here so that you can see my screen now. So let's see. It's giving me, just so you can get my email address, giving me some difficulties. Let's see. Well, it's giving me a little bit of difficulties. So for those 2 attendees that wanted,
there you go. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So hopefully you can see my screen and you can see my email address. So for those that were asking specific questions about S Corps, please email me your questions directly, and I'll make sure that I get them to Patrick, as I mentioned earlier. Wanted to go ahead and also share bbbevents.org. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of really great informational webinars that will help with crisis communications, telework information, as well as HR. So you can go to that website and you'd be able to register there, as well as get additional information on what those sessions will go into details about. All of our webinars will be recorded, and so you will get every single recording. All of our accredited businesses will, including this one. So be on the lookout for that, and please email me if you have any questions regarding these sessions or questions for Patrick in general. So I appreciate you attending, and I hope you'll have a great weekend, and be on the lookout for this recording. Thanks.